to the first meeting of the Charter Revision Committee. I am Councilwoman Angie Henderson, and Vice Chair Bob Mendez cannot be with us today. He sends his regrets, but he is not feeling well. As such, that's going to change our agenda a little bit. This is an informal meeting. It really is just to share with the committee my initial meeting with the administration. What I understand colleagues have submitted by way of proposals or the interest that they have related to charter amendments, and for us to kind of talk about how we want to do our plan of work and how we want to communicate with our colleagues about the charter amendment process and invite their suggestions. Up to this point, in the last executive committee meeting, I did share with all our committee chairs and encourage them in their interactions with the representative, the directors in their service on council. I mean, is there anything particular to their committee or the departments for which they have oversight that they understand to be a need, and whether that is at the kind of technical corrective housekeeping end of the spectrum or kind of all the way up at the kind of major significant kind of changes standpoint. So to that end, Hannah or Ms. Zeitland, I have asked and encouraged with the administration, so did meet with the administration. They shared what they understand to be some of the suggestions of our body kind of historically, and of late. And so that meeting was on the 21st of October. Then we've had executive committee subsequent with a call out there, and potentially we'll do, I think, a communication just kind of to the body, like, here is our charter, link here. Here's what we've done in the past, just kind of giving the body some context, because I think it will be important for folks to understand that, there's sort of a limited bandwidth with the public, kind of historically, like what we can communicate about, educate about, get people to vote on. So, you don't want to have 20 charter amendments. But I am also interested to see, we'll have certain ones of significance, and, is there an opportunity potentially to kind of mini omnibus some, technical things that really are, commas, rewording, like that kind of stuff. And so, Hannah, I don't know if you could speak to, subsequent to the 21st of October, any more kind of suggestions that you've received, and then Ms. Waits, our clerk, is here, and I appreciate that, and so I will share some requests we've made to the clerk and some information she's been getting us.
Hang on, I'm going to pull up kind of what I've got, and everything that I have is, I'm going to speak kind of in generalities because some of this is, privileged, and I haven't gotten.
And I appreciate that, and I guess what I should probably say is, I'm not suggesting that you say, this council member wants to do this or that.
And so that's just to kind of know, and I think that some of this won't be shocking to people, several requests have been made to change the composition of boards and commissions.
Correct.
And to increase, council picks for boards and commissions. So those are, two pretty broad categories, and that varies between, this specific board should be increased, but also there are requests that are, every board should be increased, and it should be, X number of picks for council members.
Right.
And so that's something that I think, this committee should discuss, and could put forward, one particular, instead of doing several different board and commission amendments, maybe just, one or two, depending on what this committee thinks.
And so to
is
Hannah's
best.
point, and I think what will be important as we work with Hannah kind of is the convener, right? So I've said to the administration, charter amendment is a legislative process, that rests with the council. And so, we respect and appreciate and want to work with the mayor's office, of course. But, want Hannah and our future director, they are the repository, right, for what has been suggested. And then there will be kind of a level of nuance, right, to each. I mean, generally, I think there absolutely is a heading or a title or a grouping of boards and commissions, and right sizing. And various directors of departments have certain feelings about that. I think our body has said, right, like the fair board's too small, right, like 5 people, that kind of thing. So I think there's some things that are a collective acknowledgement of the will of the body, right, like that needs to change. But there are also, and that kind of goes to speaking to committee chairs, right, like you might know from talking to a department director, like, oh gosh, my board of 20 people is kind of unwieldy, right? That I would like that board to be a little bit smaller, and I would like to make sure that there's this person with a professional, some of our boards and commissions very specifically, like the health department board, they're very prescriptive or specific about, an MD or this kind of, that technical expertise that has to be on the board. And I do think there are some of our boards and commissions from some preliminary conversations I've had, I won't mention them specifically yet, but that could benefit maybe whether it's from technical expertise or it's being a little bit smaller, and for some it's being bigger, right? And so then in working with Hannah, we're going to have to kind of figure out how do we package all of this for the understanding of our body, and a good kind of review of that, and for the public, right? So that it's not just, Hannah and staff having to come up with, this board this size and this board that size and this and that, and it's just like, all these things that we have filed. Hello, Mr. Syracuse, former chair of charter revision. Well, you're very welcome. So there's going to be kind of some of that organizational stuff. Obviously, from an administrative perspective, it's no secret that the formal establishment of the Nashville Department of Transportation, that's something that they want to advance and effectuate. So at present, we have done that through a kind of an MOU vehicle of moving solid waste to water services. So I would say from the administration's perspective, that is probably, a top priority. We've talked about right sizing of the boards and commissions. I have also been approached by the health department, and they have a whole package of potential amendments, and we have kind of a separate memo to that effect. And so I have brought that to the attention of Chair Evans, so she is aware of that. That said, I did speak with Mr. Sharp at last night's meeting. So in light of the legislation at the state, what they have sent as of now that they would like to kind of revise and update, a lot of which are just somewhat housekeeping, but in light of that, they may revise and update what they are requesting. So some of those spaces are going to be kind of dynamic, like the things are going to be changing a little bit, but I figured, we can kind of frame all this out and make sure that interest of the committee, right, whether you serve on a particular committee or you just have a policy interest in that area, that we might consider kind of splitting up the work effort a little bit, like, okay, this is something that I want to kind of take on and research or, facilitate the conversations with this department director or otherwise, because, and then we can kind of do that work individually and then report back to the group, is what I would suggest. As far as other items, they are, they're somewhat minor and technical, and it's not that we won't address them, but I don't think just for our purposes here today, they're necessarily, ones that we want to call out at this time. Councilman Rosenberg, I don't know if you want to share in the context of this meeting or just wait till another time if there's anything else. I'm just sort of reading from the list from the administration at this juncture. But I don't want to put you on the spot.
Okay.
We can discuss that at another time. But if there's anything that you wanted to share, I would welcome that.
Yeah, well, I think the one that I think will be most widely supported and is needed is right now you cannot have a liquor store or distillery outside of the USD, and that needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've lost some really good opportunities for businesses to move into my district because they haven't been allowed there.
Yeah.
I think that there are probably conversations to be had, but not necessarily charter amendments to be brought about the size of council.
Yep. Yeah.
And the way term limits are handled and that sort of thing, but that's a conversation for another time.
Another time as in another term?
I think there's a conversation to be had, but not an amendment to be brought.
Correct. Right. And I think that's one thing I
Or an
wanted.
amendment to be brought. I just don't
Yeah,
think that we can get
right.
support for an amendment like that.
I
in
think you'd be
Nevada right now.
surprised, just
Really?
in discussions with individual council members, there's, so
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been told by multiple people this may be the term to do it because we do have so much support.
Well, that's great, because I wrote one.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, and I do kind of, sorry to jump in, but I do want to add that the council has 2 resolutions per term where they can bring charter amendments. I mean, it's best to coincide with an election, and I think that, not to kind of jump ahead, I think that the August 2022
Yes.
election is what these amendments would be, going
Correct.
for. But, I mean, there's still another chance to bring charter amendments after that resolution. So, I mean, to your point, maybe don't want to bring 20 amendments at once, but you could do, well, I mean, I wouldn't say like 10 and 10, but, like a small number and then another small number later.
Right.
Yeah, I think 2023 needs to either be emergencies or things that are non-controversial, because we ran into the issue last term.
Yeah.
Where we had a lot of people that didn't show up for the last 3 months, and that was incredibly frustrating to not have enough people in the room to get pretty widely supported amendments
Right,
passed.
right. And I think to Dave's point, I think, if we want to, through kind of engagement of the larger body and kind of education, like, this is the charter, this is why we do this is what has been brought before. To that end, I did reach out to Joe Nixon at the Election Commission and to Madam Clerk Elizabeth Waits, who is here with us, just to see kind of historically what has been brought, how did we word it, how did we combine it, what were the votes, how many people voted on it, so that we really will have that historical record. Chair Waits, Madam Clerk, is there anything that you want to just kind of share about that as far as what you will have data-wise versus what the Election Commission will have? And I know that you have shared some information with me and Ms. Zeitlin, and I've asked staff to create a OneDrive, basically, just to kind of put the historical stuff in there, any research that we do. So, just as any committee can, we will have that kind of public folder that we can route our colleagues to. And so what you've sent me will potentially, Hannah will review and go into that folder. But is there anything, as long as you are kindly here today, that you wanted to share with us?
No, whenever you all meet, I'll probably continue to attend because just to bring a little bit of awareness, anytime that a charter amendment is proposed, it probably became a little bit more obvious to everybody because of some kind of recent things that happened, that I'm the person that
Yes.
facilitates everything from the moment that it's adopted from the council to sending it to the Election Commission. That didn't happen recently because basically there was a little bit of, I think, miscommunication and interference. So I am the person that
Okay.
that will take care of that. Nothing needs to be done outside of, I will send everything to the Election Commission. They will put it on their agenda, we know that, presumably. That will go smoothly, and it will be on a ballot, and the ones that are adopted, or the ones that are not adopted, that fail at referendum, will come back to us. We retain all of the Election Commission certifications as part of the permanent record in our files. And then I take each one of the text of every amendment that was adopted by the people of Davidson County and, facilitate that language being incorporated into the charter by Municode, which is our vendor. I also act as the secretary and executive director for the Charter Revision Commission, so that's a separate piece while it's pending with you all, but essentially just I think just a little bit of awareness about how much administratively, once everything is actually filed with the council, it kind of switches from the council office having that administrative duty to me doing that. So I'll definitely be paying attention to your conversations and just want to make myself available as a resource for the records that we have to help you out.
I appreciate that very much. And I think, to your point about, size of council, term limits, things that have been brought previously, I think we've got to kind of figure out a way to balance, a feeling in the community of, here we are again about the term, but I would say historically we have not really educated very well around it within the public about, and so I think to Councilman Rosenberg's point, and we can make that determination, kind of along the way. But I do think there are some kind of perennial, I would call them, things that do come up that we, I think it will be time well spent to educate around those, right? Like what peer cities do, what has been presented in the past, how the vote did go, how it was framed, et cetera. Because to your point, there is, I sense, a desire around that. And so I don't want us to just completely be like, well, no, we're not talking about that this time.
Well, and I think there was a desire even before when it was, not last term, but maybe the term prior, I can't remember, when Emily.
Correct, right.
And I think that the framing of it was the biggest challenge. I don't think people really opposed necessarily certain aspects of it. I think because it was all put together, there were certain things they didn't, and it was like an all or nothing deal, but also zero really education. So the framing of it, I think, is really important, and making it simple. Sometimes, while I think there's a huge overhaul that needs to happen, I think we all, just because we're in it, we realize we need all that. But at the same time, sometimes it's better to take a small step first, especially when we're dealing with referendums and 700,000 people that live in the county. To do it, it's like, let's take it in bite-sized pieces with an overall strategic plan of an overhaul. Because people get freaked out by like tons of change at one time. And so can we look at it and go, okay, this is 1 potato, 2 potato, and take the different potatoes at different times. And then you have a potato salad.
Okay, the amendments or potatoes, right now, okay. Got it. No,
Y'all knew what I meant.
I appreciate that. So I think what we'll kind of need to figure out is, backing in from a August ballot assumption, with the budget season factored in, going to the Charter Revision Committee, going to the Election Commission. I mean, there are a lot of, I don't think hurdles are the right, but thresholds in this process. And so to back it out and have an appropriate amount of time for education and dialogue, like I do not want us to be sort of in a brinksmanship type situation where it's like we gotta pass it at this meeting and we're trying to educate and pass and do. So I really do want to kind of, back it out, today. And really, if we're getting started, I think, Councilman Rosenberg has shared that through his previous work and service on this committee, there are some things that he has drafted and considered. So I appreciate his leadership in the past in this space. Councilman Mendez, who couldn't join us as vice chair, he is, looking at some aspects. So I think I regret that our other colleagues are not here today, but this is kind of an atypical and early time, so it's understandable. Councilman O'Connell and I, in our service, whether it's, Public Works Chair or Traffic and Parking Commission, I think that that NDOT space, that might be a good thing, if Councilman O'Connell wants to kind of take that up. So I guess I would say, if there is anything, right now that, you feel very decidedly that, you want to, work on, please, do let me know. And then I think, subsequent to this meeting, I will put together an email for the committee, with a variety of links, to our OneDrive folder with sort of the historical summary, that Clerk Waits has provided, a link to the charter, and maybe kind of just some proposed text to get your feedback on, for a communication to the broader body that says, this is what charter revision is, this is the timeline, this is the charter. I want to invite the council's participation, but I also don't want us to be drowning in a bunch of kind of random stuff, and just we need to kind of manage expectation, because I do genuinely want to advance something that is the will of our body and the will of the folks that we represent. And there's no harm in having a running list of all the various minutia, right? Having that, hello, Chair O'Connell.
Be able to prioritize from there.
Member
It's like, wait a
O'Connell.
second, did something happen that I?
No, you're not
Need
chair.
to be
We
now?
didn't vote and make you chair.
We revised the whole charter and you
Oh.
missed it.
Yes.
Exactly, it's all new.
That's, so, I was sharing, we're kind of backing out from an August ballot. And
Oh,
that
really?
there will be a communication to the council that's just sort of educational, process-wise, inviting, colleagues', input. Hannah will be kind of the master of the list. And then I think we'll want to probably just set a kind of a final date on that, so that will inform the decisions that we make. There could be something that, we have not thought of, that, a new colleague comes up with, and it's like, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. So I think, once we have invited the participation of colleagues, set a deadline, done some educating around the process, I think we will want to kind of convene again and then make a more specific determination. Yes, we're doing the updates of the health department. Yes, we are doing, the effectuating NDOT. Yes, we are right-sizing our boards and commissions. And, Councilman Rosenberg can advocate for his, USD, GSD, no liquor sales outside of that. That is in the category that, oh yeah, I mean, there have been
The liquor stores
GSD.
lining the border on the west side. Like
There-
3 of them down the right side of the road, nothing on the left side of the road.
There have been literal USD expansions solely
Just
for
for liquor
purposes
stores.
of getting a liquor store.
Yeah.
So that falls under a category that I think Councilman Rosenberg has called the arcane, right? Like these just kind of older things. And so Councilman O'Connell, one thing I did mention at the jump was, might there be a way to kind of compile, there's bigger sections or ideas or amendments, but, could we have sort of a omnibus of little technical corrections, and kind of how would we effectuate that so that it's clear to the public and we've got good education around that. Additionally, we had talked about how in kind of splitting up the work effort, whether that's, peer city research, how best to educate about something, what we need to do, that we could kind of divide the work effort, right? So if anybody has a particular interest or wants to draft that amendment in concert with staff, then we would kind of come to the table and say, okay, here's what the proposals are. That'd be something I would send to the committee ahead of time, right? Say, we need to be here, to vote on this, and then proceed in that regard. But with August being our goal, with the budget season, we really are gonna have to hit the ground running in January. And so I did wanna have the general, just contextualizing, educating, hey, council body, this is what this is. I did wanna go ahead and push that out in November. And then that way, kind of over the holiday season, and we could just say, hey, as of this date in January, get your ideas in,
All right.
And is the
I'm ready
idea,
to work on them.
good. I mean, are you thinking like end of March, or do you have anything in mind for?
I think in February, March, we need to be kind of having it drafted, I think I would be interested, Councilman Rosenberg, in your thinking on, I mean, obviously, we want to get something filed, and then we want to have a deferral, right, to just give people time to absorb it. I know you, both gentlemen had advocated in the past around ranked choice voting and things like that. Those are kind of technical things, and I think we saw, the body had a willingness to consider them, but some confusion around it, right? And so I think anything that's, going to be kind of technically complicated, like, we don't want to be doing that at the finish line, right? So I think if we know in January what we're looking at, then that helps us kind of plan the work effort,
So maybe along the lines of what budget did last year, I almost wonder if we could do like some public workshops.
Yep.
Right, to do deeper dives on some of these issues, just as, I think, information and brainstorming sessions, to both present the underlying idea and some technical background, but also to say, okay, yeah, like, just start some public conversation.
And I think in the managing expectations space, right, so there is a little bit of like, do we need to talk about, talk about right-sizing boards and commissions? What about right-sizing council? This is a conversation that the community seems to want to have and council wants to have. But, that's a very heavy lift from a community education standpoint and, kind of the hierarchy of things. So if we do, and I do think we need to do some educating around it, we may want to manage expectation for the community. I mean, I'm not saying we're not doing it this.
Your proposal for a 50-member council is bold.
Do not say that on the record.
I think
I am more of a this person. Let's get it a little smaller. So
last term, it felt like there was a lot of times we had the, our amendments, but nobody, even though there was all the stuff we tried to do, it was like a lot of our colleagues were only hearing about it at the moments they were on the floor.
Yes.
So I think we need to plan for we need to get rid of the excessive deferral thing, because if you can just refile the same bill, then what's the point of the excessive? So I think we either need to file the resolution with the expectation that we're gonna actually file a second resolution or change that rule or whatever, but I think that we need to be able to talk about this on the floor
Agreed.
multiple times.
Agreed. I concur with that, and I think we'll just have to kind of, once we know the will of the body and the committee and just how much we've got in front of us, I think that will allow us to say, okay, well, this is workshop, this needs a meeting, this needs some more educating, this is gonna be easy peasy, it just needs a little public information, and that, for some of those, it's gonna be pretty simple, like this can just live somewhere on a page, this is the case for this.
That's right. I think some of them may merit discussion, but I think even having Hannah or somebody just kind of give a lawyer's rundown, like almost like a quick analysis in a public forum. Madam Chair, do we have any action items?
We do not have any action items. In fact,
Due to
we
support another bill.
unless you all have anything else to share.
Well, thanks. I'm on
Thank
board.
you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
It's just like that.
And just
Carry
like that,
on.
Like the
I'm cool with
wind.
everything. See you later.
We're all good. So I will, I'm going to ask for Hannah to relay to me an update from Vice Chair Mendez, and once I've got that, I think I'm just gonna pull together a communication for council. I don't think at this juncture with the holiday season, all the various special committees that we're having, I think we can share educational links and resources with colleagues and invite their thought on this and engagement. But I don't see us doing any of the kind of workshop info meetings. I don't really see that happening till January and February. But January will come fast, and that, even if we're looking at that horizon, that kind of winter, spring, pre-budget time is gonna be key. So I guess with that, unless y'all have anything else to add, I appreciate your time, just sort of touching base and brainstorming a little bit. And just be, I guess, looking prior to Thanksgiving, just for communication.
That's next week.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will just, I will have Hannah forward that, from me, but on behalf of our committee, if that's okay with you all.
Sure.
Okay, all right, we are adjourned, thank you.
Thanks.